I have to ask, we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary since you were sworn in. Safe to say this first year has had some unexpected twists and turns?
It's been a heck of a year. You know, we started out fast, restoring voting rights to over 170,000 Kentuckians, creating a new Board of Education that would put public education first, protecting health care for over 100,000 Kentuckians, and submitting a budget that was going to be one of the best budgets we'd seen in a couple of decades. And then COVID hit. But to look back over this last year and what we as a people have been able to do to address a deadly virus that didn't even exist until the end of last year has been nothing short of amazing. Creating a testing system, again, that didn't exist before this virus, where we now have over 350 locations and have tested almost 3 million people. To create a 120-day stockpile of PPE when in the beginning we didn't even have enough for our nurses on the COVID wing, and getting ready to provide the first vaccines at the end of this month, just 9 months into this crisis. People have really done an amazing job. I'm really proud of this state. Even in tough times, I'm really proud to be the governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and I really look forward to next year when we're going to get to do a lot more, and we're going to defeat this virus for good.
I'd love to hear that. Hopefully things will calm down in 2021. It's been such a crazy year. You mentioned COVID-19, and obviously that is at the top of all of our thoughts. To date, you have not included the discharge rate or number of patients who may have been hospitalized with COVID-19 but made a recovery. Is there a reason that we don't receive those updates, and might those numbers be included in the briefings moving forward?
Well, when we look at recovery, one challenge is, what is recovery from COVID-19, because we still don't know the long-term impacts of the virus. For instance, Dr. Fauci believes about 20% of people are sadly what we call long haulers, some of which who got the virus in March that are still having some symptoms today. Shortness of breath, sometimes what looks like lung damage, sometimes some heart issues. So what we previously called recovered is no longer infectious. But to suggest that there aren't some potential long-term health impacts of COVID-19, and we want to be real careful about how we talk about those long-term impacts, and not suggest someone that's still struggling a little bit with those symptoms is fully recovered.
Okay, and that's kind of why it's hard to set those numbers to a number because of those reasons?
Yes, and so what we can really do is say, how many people do we believe or do we know are still infectious versus recovered? Because some people have minor symptoms, never have any difficulty at all, yet it really hits other people in really difficult ways, and wanting to be sensitive towards those difficulties, especially people who've been coping with this thing for far too long.
How do you get those who refuse to comply with COVID-related mandates to buy into the effort that you and other state leaders are trying to put forward?
Well, we end up talking about that a lot, and I worry that it overshadows the fact that the vast majority of Kentuckians wake up every day knowing the day's going to be tough, but that their decisions can mean life and death for other people. Those vast majority of Kentuckians that put on that mask, that follow the rules, that have cut down on their contacts, that have drastically changed their lives, even to financial detriment, but are doing it because they're living their faith, loving their neighbor as themselves, and doing what it takes. And you can see it in our overall numbers. While tough, we have handled this virus so much better and lost so much less than many states around us. But to those who still don't believe it, we need their help. We need their help. This is real. It's killed over 2,000 Kentuckians. And what I'd ask them to do is not listen to me, but listen to Chris, who spoke yesterday at our memorial about his brother who we lost. A brother that was a great man of faith, but unfortunately did not believe in masks until he desperately needed one. Chris and his brother's daughter, Destiny, had the courage to stand in front of the Capitol yesterday and to try to speak directly to folks, saying, please be a part of the solution. The sooner that everybody will wear a mask and do the right thing, the sooner we'll be done with this.
I want to turn to restaurant and bar owners. One group really feeling the pinch here. They feel like they need some help. One establishment in Lexington just announcing last week they will close temporarily. Is there a relief package in the works for them?
So what we have right now on the state level, where we have certainly more limited funding than the federal level, is a $40 million aid package where we think about 4,000 restaurants and bars are going to apply for a $10,000 help. It's not a loan like the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Plan from the federal government is. It's for them to pay bills. But there's no question all over the country, what we need is the federal government to provide stimulus, especially to restaurants, bars, and in other areas where, unfortunately, the virus has chosen to spread more than other areas. Where people come together and take off their masks is where this spreads. And they're an important part of our economy. They're small businesses, and I know they're struggling. And we have to take these steps, and unfortunately, they have to bear more of the sacrifice. So it's time for the federal government to step up. I don't know if we can ever make them whole, but to help bridge where we are right now to the future, because vaccines are coming. They're coming this month.
And that's a great point. It kind of leads to my next question. There's so much need in so many areas, and you mentioned calling on the federal government to pass that stimulus. Where does the money come from? The states say that they need to be rescued. Mitch McConnell, the leader of the Senate, has said no. Where does it come in, and how do we finally get this done?
Well, let's start with the basics. If Congress doesn't act, we don't even have the tools, the funding for the tools to fight the virus at a time when it's at an all-time high. We lose our money for testing. We lose our money for PPE. We lose dollars that help us distribute the vaccine. That's crazy. We have to have funding for those basics until we can get through this. But on top of it, the question is, do we want this recession to be short-lived because it was created by this virus, or do we want it to be a longer struggle than it has to be? Stimulus right now, and whether or not they want to provide it to governments, to at least give us the money to fight the virus, help individuals, help families, help businesses that are out there struggling. But now is a time when so many people need it, and for the federal government not to do it, I think would be malpractice. Now, we can't be Democrats and Republicans in the middle of a pandemic. Let's just be human beings. And in my lifetime, people have never needed help more from the federal government than they do right now.
There has been some relief from Washington. You announced last month that some of the funds you have received from Washington will help Kentucky avoid cuts in the 2021 fiscal year budget. Is that still accurate?
It is. And I will say that the CARES Act funding that we previously received was incredibly helpful. It worked. It gave us what we needed to create a testing system that's become a model for the nation. Our initial Kroger drive-through testing became the platform that the federal government uses in other states for their surge testing. It helped us provide 18 million pieces of PPE out to those that need it the most. It helped us to provide additional unemployment benefits when people were struggling, eviction relief help, so many different areas where it was critical, $300+ million to cities and counties, and it cycled through our economy in a really positive way. It helped prop up retail, restaurants, and others, and it's exactly what we need right now, something that works. It is going to help us have a better budget that we anticipated. And for us, we're going to be bold. Yes, we're going to need to save some for the future, but now is the time to continue our priorities of education, of health care, of protecting retirements and creating jobs, but also in providing a little extra help, if not a lot extra help, to our people. And now's the time to invest in ways to create jobs. The post-COVID economy is going to be created, and the winners in that economy are going to be based on decisions we're making right now.
Governor, I want to turn to unemployment relief. It's another painful touch point for so many Kentuckians. And I want to read to you a few emails that we received here at LEX 18. One gentleman says he's been trying to collect his unemployment benefits since September. Another says he filed back on March 17th. He still gets calls saying that he's in the queue. Another woman says she was unemployed on July 30th. 8 emails later, calls only answered by automation, and she can't make an appointment because none are available. What's been done? I know it's been a difficult situation. You hired Ernst & Young earlier this year to assist with this process. What else can you and state leaders do to help Kentuckians receive these benefits they still desperately need?
Yeah, my heart goes out to those individuals. And I know it doesn't provide solace to them, but we are working as hard and as fast as we can to provide the relief that's necessary. This is what happens when in good times you don't invest or provide upkeep to that safety net that is critically important. A couple years ago, they cut over 90 employees that right now would have been going through those claims. They eliminated offices all around the state, which could have helped people in person. And they didn't replace a IT system that is over 20 years old and has created enormous problems in this. But that's our reality, and we've had to fight through it. So we've done about $6 million worth of upgrades to the system. We see that paying off. We brought in Ernst & Young, and they've gone through a whole lot of claims. Our challenge has been volume, plus those other challenges, and the fact that this system was created by the federal government to tell people no, and to be really difficult going forward. So some people, we've gotten through the initial phase, but every couple weeks they've got to go online and answer some questions, designed, I believe, so the federal government can say no. Well, we're in a place right now where we need to tell people yes. So as we're sitting here today, a higher percentage of people have been approved for unemployment in Kentucky during the pandemic than before. But with the volume, there's still a lot of people that we haven't gotten to, and it's unacceptable. And what we've got to do now is grind through it and make sure we can get them the help they need.
I'm running out of time, but very quickly, to those individuals, how can they cut through the red tape and get to somebody? Is there a short answer for that?
Well, we'd love if you could provide us those names that you've got. We'll see if we can work with them. Again, we want to help everybody, and sometimes it's the media telling us about people that hopefully didn't fall through the cracks, but oftentimes there's little mistakes that were made at no fault of the individual. But again, a system that was designed to tell people no, we've learned that we've got to change that system on the federal government side as well.
Okay, I want to get very quickly to something that's been lost in the hoopla here in recent weeks, and that is the successful election here in the Commonwealth just last month. Increased early voting, more polling places. This was a successful, agreeable, bipartisan effort put on by Democrats and Republicans alike. Will we see more of this in the future, or was this just a one-time thing?
Isn't it amazing what can happen when people put their parties aside and come together and realize that, number one, elections are critically important. They're the bedrock of our democracy. And number two, we're in the middle of a pandemic. So let's sit down and create the best plan we can. The Republican Secretary of State, Michael Adams, was a great partner. We were able to put on an election, I think, that's the envy of the nation, that had some of the highest turnout ever with the most options. And to date, we don't have a report of a single poll worker that contracted COVID during it. And so this ought to be a model that we use in the future. And I'm for everything that we did in this election and making it permanent. I'm not sure if the Secretary of State's going to be for all those pieces. I'm going to encourage him to be. But if you look at the election results, what it disproved is that any form that we did, mail-in voting, early voting, favors one party or another. What they favor is democracy, and everybody loves the convenience of it. So we ought to get it done.
And like you said, show the rest of the country how to do it. Maybe you'll have a task force to go out and teach this to everybody else, the other 49 states and the District of Columbia.
We'd be happy to help. We could even talk about what a little bipartisanship can do, because we'd love to see that in D.C.
Okay, absolutely. Governor, we thank you for your time this morning, and we'll talk with you again soon. Thank you and happy holidays.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Kentucky.